Chapter 31. Throwing his weight around. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. After shouting, Cheyenne hastened over and was instantly furious when she saw her parents struggling and being pulled away by the security officers. She hurriedly stepped forward to stop them. "Let go. Stop struggling. I have something to say." The few security officers naturally knew Cheyenne, but they ignored her. Instead of letting go as they were told, they looked at Bryce to seek his opinion. Cheyenne Carter. He stared at Cheyenne smugly. "I've said long ago that I would definitely kick you and your family of leeches out." He stared at Cheyenne's face in a bid to find some traces of pleading, regret, and agony. However, Cheyenne simply stared at him coldly and asked mercilessly, "Are you a dimwit?" "What did you say?" Bryce barked furiously. Looking at Bryce straight in the eye, she said clearly, "Are you a dimwit?" "The fact that I can't convince the Stardust Corporation to withdraw its decision to sue the Brilliance Corporation means that the Brilliance Corporation will have to compensate it a large sum of money. And the Brilliance Corporation might just go bankrupt as a result. Instead of rushing to deal with this urgent matter, you came to my house to throw your weight around. Don't you think you're a dimwit? You." Bryce was immediately shocked, speechless. Besides, he was indeed preoccupied with thinking about how Cheyenne and her family would be kicked out as long as she couldn't fulfill his grandpa's demands. However, he didn't realize until now that Cheyenne's failure would also mean that the Carters were about to lose a lot of money. Bryce's face turned pale, and his hand began to tremble. If the Brilliance Corporation went bankrupt 2 days after he took over, Bryce would become the laughingstock of the entire Orange County. "Indeed, you're brainless," Charlotte mocked. "Shut up." Bryce roared in annoyance and glared at Charlotte. But he suddenly discovered a stylish and luxurious silvery red Lamborghini parked outside. Moreover, it was a limited edition one. It was a sports car worth several million. Bryce glared at them with his eyes wide open. "How dare you people use the Carters' money to buy such an expensive sports car? I have never bought such an expensive car in my life before." At this moment, Bryce was infuriated, as he didn't expect that Cheyenne's family would secretly steal so much from the Carters despite looking ordinary and living in an old, shabby house. Angered by his words, Charlotte barked, "Bullshit. The Sawyers gave this car to me as a betrothal gift. It has nothing to do with the Carters." Sawyers. Betrothal gift. Bryce immediately thought of something. A few days ago, it seemed that someone had indeed told him that the chief butler of the Sawyers, the richest family in Orange County, had made a trip to Cheyenne's home with a box of money and title deeds and a car because Ethan Sawyer's son wanted to marry Charlotte. However, he didn't believe it at all at that time. Ethan Sawyer's family was the wealthiest family in Orange County, and their wealth was dozens of times that of Carter's. Besides, Charlotte Carter was just the daughter of a bastard and wasn't as pretty as her sister, Cheyenne. What did the Sawyers see in her? Thus, he had been extremely disdainful at the time and didn't believe it at all. He even told that person that even if those items were sent to William Carter's home, the sender must have made a mistake. However, the flashy and ostentatious Lamborghini right in front of their home. This was enough to prove that it was true that Ethan Sawyer indeed planned to let his son marry Charlotte Carter, and they even gave her family hefty betrothal gifts. However, the most important thing now was to get rid of Cheyenne's family without letting them take away a single cent or the betrothal gifts from the Sawyers. With a menacing gaze, Bryce ordered the security officers, "Ignore them. Drive the people in there out, and make sure they don't take anything." "How dare you!" Karen shrieked and started shoving the security officers, holding her back in a bid to rush back into the house. "He must be kidding. My lifelong savings and the large chest of betrothal gifts worth at least $10 million are all placed underneath my bed. How can I let that scoundrel Bryce take them away?" Unfortunately, Karen was only an ordinary middle-aged woman, no matter how feisty she might be. She couldn't break free from the security officer's restraint at all. "Let go of my mother." Seeing this, Cheyenne and Charlotte hurriedly rushed up to help, but the two of them were just weak women and couldn't compete with several strong security officers. Seeing the struggling trio who were furious but rendered immobile, Bryce guffawed loudly. He went over to them, reached out to grab a tuft of Cheyenne's hair, and then tugged hard. "Cheyenne Carter, get lost with your shameless family. I'm telling you, I won't give the Brilliance Corporation to you even if it gets ruined in my hands. Don't even think about it for the rest of your life." Cheyenne glared at Bryce with bloodshot eyes full of fury. "Ha ha ha, you're angry, huh? But what can you do to me?" While laughing, Bryce yanked her hair again haughtily. "Let go of my sister." Charlotte was panic-stricken. She tried to move Bryce's hand away forcefully but to no avail. "Let go." Suddenly, a figure leaped over and clamped down on Bryce's hand as quick as lightning. Lucas. Cheyenne and Charlotte were on the verge of tears when they finally saw Lucas clearly, especially Charlotte, who had witnessed Lucas's combat skills before. When she saw him, she felt as though she had seen her savior. Bryce was shocked to have his wrist grabbed, but by the time he saw Lucas clearly, he immediately said derisively in disdain, "What can you do to me? You're just garbage. Damn it. Let go of me or else." Before he could finish, he felt a sharp and excruciating pain in his wrist, accompanied by a loud snap. The pain almost made him pass out. "Ah! My wrist!" Bryce shrieked at the top of his lungs like an animal getting slaughtered. Lucas lifted Bryce up by his collar and casually flung him away. Just like that, Bryce, who weighed about 80 kilograms, was thrown out of the courtyard of Cheyenne's home. When he landed, Bryce howled in pain again. Everyone was stunned. The security officers were dumbfounded, and no one remembered to tend to Bryce. In their opinion, it definitely took an extraordinary person to lift someone of Bryce's weight up and effortlessly fling him away like a piece of garbage. Chapter 32. Forced by kinship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Cheyenne looked at Lucas in great disbelief. It was the first time she saw Lucas's impressive combat abilities and the first time he came to help her when she was being bullied. All of a sudden, Cheyenne looked at Lucas with a complicated gaze. The security officers looked at each other in dismay, at a loss for what to do. Logically speaking, they ought to follow Bryce's orders and throw Cheyenne's family out. But now, Bryce was thrown out like a dead pig, and they were fearful of Lucas, who looked like someone not to be trifled with. "Get lost!" Lucas roared. All the security officers' hearts palpitated, and they scurried away anxiously. Bryce was helped up. His other hand was holding his broken wrist, and his head was covered in cold sweat. With a sinister gaze, he threatened, "I won't let you off. Just you wait." They drove away in their cars. Karen's hair and clothes were in a mess after being yanked around during the chaotic struggle just now. She randomly combed her hair with her fingers. And ignoring her daughters, who had been mistreated, she immediately dashed over to Lucas. "Who told you to hit Bryce? He's Dominic Carter's precious grandson. If you hit him, Dominic Carter isn't going to let us off. You good for nothing, all you do is cause trouble everywhere. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have been kicked out by the Carters. It's all your fault, you jinx. Get lost." Karen reached out and was about to slap Lucas. "Mother." Charlotte hurriedly stopped her. "Why didn't you rush out like this when Bryce grabbed Cheyenne by the hair and bullied her? If Lucas hadn't come and chased Bryce away, Cheyenne would have been bullied badly. Do you think your grandfather will let us off after he beat Bryce up?" Karen questioned. "All you do is worry about being blamed by Grandpa. Will Grandpa let us off just because Lucas doesn't hit Bryce?" Angered by Karen's words, Charlotte flew into a rage. "Before he came, we were already getting bullied. Do you want us to kneel down in front of Bryce and beg him for forgiveness so that Grandpa won't blame us? What does a girl like you know? Bryce and your grandfather are not to be provoked. Otherwise, our family will be kicked out. If we get kicked out, so be it. Who wants to stay with the Carters and get bullied every day? Anyway, Cheyenne and I can work to earn money to provide for you guys. Charlotte was extremely disgusted with Bryce and the others. Cheyenne's eyes were full of fatigue, and she was extremely exhausted, so she couldn't help but sway unsteadily. Lucas rushed forward to hold her. Cheyenne looked at Lucas with a vulnerable gaze. I'm so tired. Can I trust you with what you said previously? Lucas nodded and said with a gentle yet sharp gaze, yes. I said that I won't let anyone bully you again in the future. As long as you want something, I'll get it for you. Cheyenne closed her eyes, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. Looking at her tears, Lucas felt heartache. When he thought about how the Carters were bullying her, his expression turned cold. Wait for me. Lucas looked deeply at Cheyenne and then turned around to leave. After lecturing Charlotte, Karen saw Lucas walking out in the blink of an eye, and she couldn't help but curse. Do you see that? He's the first one to run away after he got us into trouble because he knows that we've offended your grandfather and the others. But you still believe him. You guys are foolish. We were doing fine before, and Cheyenne was just about to discuss marriage with Seth when he suddenly came and caused such a huge mess. Now that we're going to be chased away and he's not going to get any benefits anymore, he immediately decided to flee. How can anyone be so shameless? Previously, he went missing for 6 years. How long is he going to go missing for this time? Cheyenne, take a careful look at this person. Divorce him and marry a better man. Karen's words were like daggers stabbing into Cheyenne's heart. Can I still trust him? He made promises, but will he really come back again? Bang! Thunder rumbled deafeningly in the sky full of gloomy clouds. In the blink of an eye, it began raining heavily. The Carters were in low spirits. Cheyenne, go and beg your grandfather. Beg him to withdraw his order and not chase us away. If we really get kicked out, how can we secure a foothold in Orange County? Karen tugged Cheyenne's arm. Extremely anxious, Charlotte exclaimed, Mom. How can you force my sister like this? Cheyenne, your father and I are not very capable, and we've been relying on the Carters' dividends to get by. I'm already old. If we really get chased out now, it's going to be humiliating. Cheyenne, go and beg your grandfather, William said to Cheyenne after staying silent for a long time. Dad. Why are you acting like this too? Your pride matters, but so does Cheyenne's. Charlotte looked at her father in shock and disappointment. Cheyenne was extremely upset. She bit her lip hard and stared at her parents. Fine, I'll listen to you and go beg them. Her eyes turned red, and she got up to dash into the rain, her tears mixing with the raindrops on her face. Cheyenne. Charlotte panicked and was about to dash out, but Karen stopped her. Why are you so insensible? Karen roared at Charlotte. Charlotte watched as her thin and weak sister vanished into the rain. You guys are too much. Charlotte hollered at her parents furiously with a look of disappointment. She was so angry that she was about to cry. Outside the gates of the Carter residence. Mr. Carter, are we really not going to let her in? It's raining so heavily out there, asked the servant taking pity on the thin and disheveled Cheyenne kneeling outside the iron gates and swaying unsteadily. Humph, she deserves it. Bryce was sitting in a luxurious and warm hall, appreciating the pathetic state that Cheyenne was in outside the glass window. There was a white bandage around his wrist that was still hurting. Whenever he felt pain in his arm, he would grow even more resentful, and he would feel some joy from staring at the woman kneeling outside. This is the consequence you have to bear for hitting me. Even though Cheyenne was kneeling outside, he was glad about it. Upstairs, Dominic Carter was also staring at the figure outside with a straight face, not revealing any emotions at all. Chapter 33. Take her away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The other Carters at the side were staring gloatingly at Cheyenne kneeling outside, as if she was the greatest joke. Ha, so what if Cheyenne Carter was a successful career woman who used to be a CEO? She still has to kneel outside our door like a dog and beg us to take her in now, doesn't she? She still delusionally thought that she could negotiate with Grandpa and snatch the Brilliance Corporation away. She can dream on. She and her family are outright shameless. They're clearly outsiders, but they're so thick-skinned. Of course she'd be in trouble for offending Dominic and Bryce. She's begging for mercy only because she's getting kicked out now. She deserves it. Well, it's pointless. They should have been chased out long ago. Soon, someone went out with an umbrella and threw a few pieces of paper in front of Cheyenne. She subconsciously tried to grab them, but they were soon blown into a puddle by the wind. As the papers got wet and clumpy, the ink on them quickly faded away. Staring at Cheyenne expressionlessly, the old butler working for the Carters said, "These are the official papers of disownment. The names of your family members, and you have been removed from the Carter family records, and the Carters will announce this soon. You no longer belong to the family, and all your properties, bonuses, and rights to dividends will be deprived." A bolt of lightning flashed, reflecting on Cheyenne's pale face. Grandpa is really disowning us. Why? What exactly did we do wrong for you to do this to us? Haven't I done enough for the Carters all these years? Cheyenne slumped onto the ground and started bawling out loud when she looked at the pieces of paper that had already been mushed up because of the rain. This is the decision that Mr. Carter Sr. and the other Carters have reached. This gate also belongs to the Carters. If you want to kneel, stay farther away, the butler said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the butler sensed a terrifying aura land on his body, followed by a tight slap on his face. Who are you? How dare you speak to her that way? Lucas appeared beside Cheyenne, and he had a murderous gaze as he glared daggers at the butler. If not for the fact that the butler was on in his years, Lucas would have given him more than just a slap. The butler covered his face in shock and fury. No one had ever dared to hit him on the territory of the Carters. He wanted to call security over. But when his eyes met Lucas's murderous gaze, he was frightened to the point of choking on his words. He was certain that if he dared to make a single sound, Lucas would kill him. Lucas lowered his head and looked at Cheyenne, who was kneeling on the ground, her hair and clothes drenched to the extent that she looked extremely miserable. She was his woman, and yet she was being abused like this. Anger brewed in Lucas's eyes as he glared at the butler before shifting his gaze to the Carter residence behind the metal gates. His icy gaze seemed to be able to penetrate through the rain and glass, casting onto the Carters behind it, including Bryce and Dominic. One day, you Carters will regret your decision today and pay the price for it. Lucas took off his jacket, wrapped it around the drenched Cheyenne, picked her up in his arms, and then disappeared into the rain. Shortly after Lucas left, Dominic received a phone call in the room. The person calling was extremely flustered, and his speech was incoherent. "Chairman, bad news. The Stardust Corporation sent its lawyer and legal team to the Brilliance Corporation to sue us for breach of contract. It has also issued us a lawyer's letter that states that we have to compensate according to the amount demanded, or it will go through legal procedures to enforce compensation." What? Dominic Carter sprung up immediately, turning pale with horror as he dropped the phone onto the carpet. "Grandpa, what do we do?" asked Bryce, who had heard everything clearly at the side and was now overwhelmed with anxiety. With a glum expression, Dominic exclaimed, "Call all the directors to come to the office immediately." Soon, a convoy of cars quickly drove out of the gates of the Carter residence and hurried to the Brilliance Corporation. Dominic and the others hurried to the office too. As soon as they entered, they saw a few people waiting in the reception room on the first floor. "Hello. It's been hard on all of you to come here despite the heavy rain." Dominic hurriedly reached his hand out. However, the people of Stardust Corporation didn't intend to be friendly. Instead, they simply took out the legal letter stamped with a bright red seal and handed it to Dominic formally in a businesslike manner. "You must be clear about the situation now, so I shall cut straight to the chase. Please tell the Brilliance Corporation to prepare the compensation of $70.7 million within 3 days and credit it to our designated account." Dominic shuddered. He wouldn't be able to raise $70.7 million even if he sold the entire Brilliance Corporation. Bryce found it unacceptable too. "We just signed the contract 2 days ago. We haven't even started doing anything yet, so how can there be a breach of contract? You people are bullying us on purpose." "Shut up." Dominic immediately hollered to stop Bryce from continuing. They couldn't offend the Stardust Corporation at this juncture. Bryce fell silent angrily with an indignant look in his eyes. "Humph, do you think we're bullying you? The reason for the breach of contract is stated clearly in the lawyer's letter and the contract. Can't you see for yourself? If you're illiterate or too lazy to look at it, let our lawyer, Mr. Smith, read it to you and see if we're bullying you or not." Mr. Smith held up the gold-rimmed glasses on his face and pulled out another legal letter and a copy of the contract from his briefcase. He then said politely but distantly to Dominic, "Please listen carefully. Section 36 of this contract stipulates that Party A, the Stardust Corporation, and Party B, the Brilliance Corporation, have reached a consensus to cooperate. During the contract period, Party B must designate Cheyenne Carter as the sole person in charge of the cooperation. If Party B is found to be in breach of cooperation, the contract will immediately become void, and Party B must compensate Party A for the breach of contract with the agreed amount of $70.7 million. Mr. Smith put away the contract and looked at the two of them, who were pale. "Have you heard clearly? Do you need me to repeat?" Bryce still couldn't believe it, and he repeatedly instructed someone to retrieve the contract kept in the Brilliance Corporation's office. Then he turned to the last page and realized that there was indeed such a clause in the contract, which Dominic Carter had signed and sealed. He confirmed that there was no error, and it was indeed stated so in the contract. The Carters were really in breach of contract. Bryce fell onto the ground immediately. Dominic's knees grew weak. His face turned pale, and he immediately looked like he had aged a lot. Who would have thought that there would be a clause in the contract that designated Cheyenne Carter as the sole person in charge of the cooperation? Chapter 34. How to Compensate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The head of the group, Mr. Harris, looked at the two of them with disdain. Over the past 2 days, the Brilliance Corporation had been troubled over the matter of being sued by the Stardust Corporation. Cheyenne Carter had been staying outside the Stardust Corporation's office every day in a bid to see Flynn Davis. On the other hand, none of the men of the Carter family showed up. Since it was stated in the contract that Cheyenne was to be the person in charge, the Carters had to comply and make her the person in charge. However, Harris knew that the Carters immediately appointed Bryce as the general manager of the Brilliance Corporation on the same morning that they signed the contract. On the other hand, Cheyenne left with red and swollen eyes. He felt that the Carters had no one to blame but themselves for the breach of contract because they had brought it upon themselves. "Since we have delivered the legal letter, it's time for us to leave now." Harris sorted out the documents and was about to leave when Dominic suddenly grabbed his arm. "Wait, Mr. Harris. I think this is all a misunderstanding. I know Mr. Davis must have taken a liking to Cheyenne Carter. It's all right. I'll send her over to Mr. Davis immediately. It doesn't matter what status she's given. We don't care about superficial statuses. As long as Mr. Davis is willing to withdraw this legal letter on account of our sincerity and continue to cooperate with the Carters.
F******. Harris immediately cursed, shocked by his shamelessness. Would an ordinary person give away his granddaughter like she was cargo without any qualms? How could a grandfather say such a thing? Besides, Cheyenne Carter was not someone whom ordinary people could covet because she was the wife of a big shot. If Mr. Davis heard Dominic's words, he would definitely be frightened. Harris interrupted Dominic's delusion and said sternly, "You'd better not spout nonsense or do anything funny in private. Otherwise, neither I nor Mr. Davis can save you." What does this mean? Even Mr. Davis can't save us. Is there someone more powerful than Mr. Davis? Could it be that someone more authoritative has taken a liking to Cheyenne? With a trace of contempt in his eyes, Harris looked at Dominic, who seemed to be lost in thought. Harris coughed and said, "Of course, as far as I know, the Brilliance Corporation may not be able to afford such a high amount of compensation, so I shall offer you a solution out of goodwill. It's up to you to consider and decide." "Mr. Harris, please tell us," Dominic hurriedly said. Harris cut straight to the chase. "You can use the Brilliance Corporation as a form of compensation and top up another $3 million. What? We have to hand over the Brilliance Corporation and an additional $3 million. Bryce instantly sprung up furiously. "Shut up." Dominic stopped Bryce. Harris ignored him and said with a smile, "Alternatively, you may choose to pay the compensation of $70.7 million. Bryce and Dominic Carter looked rather agitated. Under the Carters' management, the development of the Brilliance Corporation had been substandard and would perhaps have been worse if Cheyenne hadn't closed some deals every now and then. The Brilliance Corporation was currently valued at less than $15 million. Compared to the compensation of $70.7 million, handing over the Brilliance Corporation and another $3 million to the Stardust Corporation was definitely much more acceptable. However, the frustration made Bryce and Dominic feel like vomiting blood. They were in high spirits after gleefully signing the contract, but they ended up with no profits and even had to lose their company and $3 million. How could they not be upset? However, none of them expected Cheyenne to be the designated person in charge as required by the contract. This made Dominic get the wrong idea. "Mr. Harris, if we call Cheyenne to come back and appoint her as the person in charge, will we no longer be in breach of contract?" Dominic asked. When Bryce heard those words, his expression changed. Does Grandpa plan to hand over the Brilliance Corporation to Cheyenne? How can he do that? However, after he thought about it, he realized that compared to losing the entire Brilliance Corporation, letting Cheyenne take over the company for the time being was still acceptable. "We'll let her manage it for the time being and then take it back from her in the future." However, to everyone's surprise, Harris sneered. "Mr. Carter, you must be joking. You have already breached the contract. It'd be useless even if you let Miss Cheyenne Carter come back to be in charge. For example, if you've stabbed someone with a knife, do you think pulling the knife out is going to help?" Dominic was immediately speechless. He wanted to explain that the two matters were completely different because the Carters' action did not harm the Stardust Corporation in any way. If Mr. Davis and the figure of greater authority insisted that Cheyenne Carter be the person in charge, he could just comply. However, Harris didn't even bother to give Dominic another chance to speak and said directly, "Of course, I'm just relaying our general manager's kind suggestion to you. Forget it if you're not willing to accept. After all, the Brilliance Corporation's management has always been mediocre. The Stardust Corporation is not bent on wanting it." When Harris looked like he was about to leave, Dominic hurriedly stopped him. "As long as we give you the Brilliance Corporation and $3 million, the compensation will be considered paid." "Is that so?" "Yes, Mr. Carter. If you're still worried, we can issue a written agreement to state it in detail." Harris pointed at the lawyer next to him. Dominic gritted his teeth and agreed. "Okay, we agree soon,
both parties signed all the agreements and transfer procedures in the presence of lawyers and a notary. The Brilliance Corporation officially separated from the Carters. Bryce felt the pain tremendously. Although they had initially snatched the Brilliance Corporation away from Cheyenne, they had long considered it as their own. Moreover, the large sum of $3 million was a dent in their bank account. Dominic felt the same too. But he nonetheless forced himself to smile as he thanked the people of the Stardust Corporation and walked them out. Well, it couldn't be helped since the Stardust Corporation was backed by the powerful Hutton family. Although the Carters felt like they had been cheated, they dared not voice their displeasure. Besides, it was their fault for failing to read the contract clearly. Ah, who else can we blame? Gritting his teeth, Bryce exclaimed, "It's all Cheyenne Carter's fault. Grandpa, let's chase them out immediately. I can't wait any longer." Chapter 35. When she was sick. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Meanwhile, Lucas held Cheyenne, who was drenched in the heavy rain, in his arms along the way back to the Carters' old residence, where Cheyenne lived. As soon as the gates were pushed open, Cheyenne's parents, who had been waiting for news about her, popped up in front of the courtyard. How did it go? Did Dominic agree? This was what they were most eager about. They wanted to see if Dominic Carter would ease up and let them off the hook. Lucas frowned. As soon as the couple saw Lucas entering with Cheyenne in his arms, they were shocked and flustered. "Cheyenne. What's the matter with you, Cheyenne?" Karen immediately grabbed Lucas's arm and shouted sternly, "Tell me. Scoundrel, did you do something to Cheyenne again?" "Mother." Cheyenne opened her eyes feebly and called out. Noticing that there was something wrong with Cheyenne's complexion because the area below her cheekbones was flushed, Lucas immediately thought, "Oh no." He then carried her into the house. "Stop. I haven't let you in yet. I'm asking you a question." Karen stopped Lucas unrelentingly. "You're her mother, so can't you see she's sick?" Lucas's tone was already extremely distant as he stared at Karen coldly. He then bypassed her, walked up the stairs, and carried Cheyenne to her room. Charlotte scurried over upon hearing them, and she got a great shock when she saw Cheyenne's appearance. "Cheyenne, what happened to you? You were fine just now. How did you get so drenched? Didn't your father tell you to go beg your grandfather? How did you end up like this? Did Dominic agree?" Karen muttered as she followed them into the room. "What? You guys told Cheyenne to go beg Grandpa. Why didn't you two go yourselves? It's still pouring so heavily outside. Cheyenne must have fallen ill because she got drenched in the rain." Charlotte was exasperated. "What are you saying? She's the one who made him angry and the reason he's chasing us out. Of course, she has to go plead with him." "There's no point in us going," Karen said righteously, only to make Charlotte even more furious. "Enough." Lucas interrupted them in annoyance. "The most important thing now is to give Cheyenne a hot bath and a change of clothes. I'll call a doctor to come over." He stood up and looked down at the two women across the room, making them feel oppressed by his staggering height. "She's sick now, so I hope you won't bother her with these things again." With that, Lucas walked out of the room. Karen was dumbfounded for several seconds before finally reacting. "This good.4.nothing actually gave me orders in my own home. He was even acting so domineeringly just now." She even subconsciously felt a little reverent toward him. "This is infuriating. Who does that good.4.nothing think he is? How dare he talk to me like that?" Karen was incredibly displeased. "Okay, Mom, if you can't take care of Cheyenne, just go out first. Stop bothering her with any more nonsense," Charlotte said to Karen in annoyance as she helped Cheyenne up, who was running a high fever. "Cheyenne, can you still walk? I'll help you to the bathroom now." Soon, Lucas came back with a bespectacled doctor clad in a white coat. Staring at Lucas and the doctor with a look of apprehension, Karen jibed, "Where did this doctor come from? Is he a random doctor you found? If you end up causing harm to Cheyenne, I won't spare you." Being doubted for no reason, the doctor glared at Karen scornfully. "Excuse me, I'm Finn Johnson, the director of the respiratory department of First People's Hospital of Orange County. If you're in doubt, you may go to the hospital to check. Please move aside now and refrain from disturbing me while I give the patient a diagnosis." Director. You must be bragging. First People's Hospital is a first-class hospital, and the doctors working there never conduct consultations outside of the hospital, what more the directors. Karen was in greater suspicion, and she refused to let them in. Charlotte pulled Karen aside angrily and protested, "Mom, he's here to treat Cheyenne. Must you keep acting like this? If you have the time, you might as well go brew a bowl of ginger soup for Cheyenne or bring a warm water bag here." Actually, Charlotte was really annoyed with her insensitive parents. They had forced Cheyenne to go out in the rain to apologize, causing her to end up suffering large bruises on her knees, which Charlotte noticed when she was helping her change just now. Her skin turned pale too, and she had clearly been kneeling in the rain for a long time. Needless to say, she was kneeling because of their heartless grandfather, who controlled the entire family. Charlotte was exasperated yet sad for her sister. Yet her parents didn't seem to care about the fact that Cheyenne was running a high fever and had gotten her legs bruised from kneeling. They even kept probing about nonsensical issues. Now, they were even stopping the doctor and suspecting if he was a phony. This left her speechless. If not for the fact that they were her parents, Charlotte would have lost her temper. Feeling a little guilty because of Charlotte's angry glare, Karen made her way downstairs in displeasure while still muttering incessantly, "All of you became disobedient after growing up. How dare you be so fierce to me too? You're a bunch of ingrates." Fortunately, Cheyenne's fever wasn't too severe, and it basically subsided after she took some medicine and was put on a drip. By the time Cheyenne opened her eyes again, she saw two pairs of eyes staring at her beside the bed. "Mommy, you're finally awake." Amelia leaped over and kissed Cheyenne on the cheek. "Mommy, you've been sleeping because you're sick. I tried to wake you up, but Daddy said I shouldn't disturb you from resting. I was so worried." Amelia laid down beside Cheyenne gleefully while carefully trying not to squeeze her. Cheyenne gently stroked her daughter's head and looked at the other person beside the bed, only to realize that it was Lucas. He was sitting on the carpet and looking at her with a tender gaze, his hair and clothes still damp. At this moment, Cheyenne felt extremely touched as she looked at Lucas. At that time, she was kneeling in front of the cold iron gates of the Carter residence while everyone looked at her gloatingly through the glass windows like she was a joke. The only person who came out was the old butler, who had given her the proof of her family being disowned and told her to stay farther away. Her dignity and body were greatly tortured. Cheyenne thought that she wasn't going to be able to hold on any longer. At that juncture, someone wrapped a warm jacket around her and put his sturdy arms on her shoulders while taking her away from that overbearing place. This person was Lucas. Lucas was the one. Cheyenne looked at Lucas very seriously, and for the first time, she felt that he was reliable and even gave her a sense of security. Chapter 36. Auction Venue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Chairman, we've already obtained ownership of the Brilliance Corporation, Flynn Davis reported respectfully over the phone. Lucas assented nonchalantly, not bothered by it because it was within his plan. "Let me ask you, where can I buy a diamond ring in good quality jewelry in Orange County?" he suddenly asked. There are many gold stores that you can buy jewelry from, but there's going to be an auction in the Central Art Gallery in the east of the city tonight. I heard that lots of precious jewelry are going to be put up for auction, and the finale piece is an extremely rare diamond ring," Davis hurriedly answered. "Okay, I know. Tonight, Lucas arrived at the entrance of the Central Art Gallery. After he took 2 steps, a middle-aged man hurried toward him. "Welcome, Mr. Gray," the middle-aged man said warmly with a smile. Lucas raised his brows and looked at the middle-aged man. He was Ethan Sawyer, the richest man in Orange County. Although Lucas had a feud with the Huttons, Ethan Sawyer was very interesting, and he greeted Lucas in a friendly manner right from the start. He even gave Cheyenne's family a large amount of expensive betrothal gifts on Lucas's behalf. However, the Carters mistook that the gifts were for Charlotte, and many other misunderstandings arose. "Mr. Gray, my family happens to be the host of the auction tonight. I'll take you inside. If we use this passage, no one will notice us." Sawyer was smart enough to take Lucas through a secret passage to the private room on the 2nd floor of the auction venue because he knew that Lucas wasn't willing to reveal his identity. The private room was well hidden and offered a good view that would allow the auction items to be seen clearly. Sawyer handed Lucas an exquisite booklet. "Mr. Gray, this is the catalog of items that will be up for auction tonight. Actually, if you see anything that you like, we'll just deliver them to you." Lucas glanced at Sawyer with a half-hearted smile. "Do you think I'm short of money?" Sawyer froze. He was too eager to form friendly ties with Lucas, but he forgot that Lucas was known as the God of War and had power and wealth far beyond his own. "I won't bother you then. I hope you enjoy your night. Call me if you need anything. I'll be in the private room right next to this one." Sawyer excused himself tactfully. Soon, the auction officially started. Lucas did not stand on ceremony and bid on any item that he liked at a high price. Those who wanted to vie with him were defeated by Lucas's wealth and generosity. Even the last few pieces of extremely valuable jewelry and the large pink diamond ring, the finale piece, were bought by Lucas at a staggering price. Even Ethan Sawyer, the richest man in Orange County, sitting in the private room beside Lucas's, couldn't help but inhale in awe, let alone the others who participated in this auction. Everyone was discussing who the tycoon who had spent tens of millions of dollars at the auction was. Unfortunately, Sawyer had already taken care of everything, so no one could find out the real identity of this mysterious tycoon. Although they didn't know the identity of the tycoon, that didn't stop them from spreading the word about the sensational event at the auction tonight. Soon, some wealthy families found out that a mega-rich tycoon appeared at the auction tonight and spent tens of millions of dollars in the blink of an eye. He's so wealthy. The rich have the right to do whatever they want. He spent so much on jewelry. I'm so envious. At this moment, Lucas was giving Davis a task. "Help me throw a banquet in your name 5 days from now. Invite all the families in Orange County that are well-to do. Make sure the guests are served well and raise the standards of hospitality to the maximum. Remember to invite the Carters too." Davis hurriedly noted it down. "Yes, Chairman." During the next few days, Davis was busy with running the Stardust Corporation and preparing for the banquet, while Lucas concentrated on looking after Cheyenne, who had not recovered from her illness yet. He also spent time nurturing his relationship with his precious daughter, Amelia. Apart from Karen's occasional mockery, life was rather peaceful. Bryce, who had been clamoring about kicking Cheyenne out immediately, was overwrought with the matters that cropped up all of a sudden and didn't have time to go to Cheyenne's home to chase her and her family away. "Grandpa, the people of the Unity Corporation just called to say that they're terminating their cooperation with us. They're the 10th company that wants to terminate cooperation with us over the past few days. What should we do?" Bryce asked Dominic anxiously. Since the Carters breached the contract with the Stardust Corporation a few days ago and compensated it with the Brilliance Corporation and $3 million in cash, the Carters became the laughing stock of Orange County. Their status had also plunged significantly, and to make matters worse, they had offended the Stardust Corporation. Thus, many of their former business partners decided to cease their cooperation with the Carters. This is exasperating. They're all just a bunch of fence-sitters and cowards.
The Unity Corporation used to be worse than the Carters, and they sucked up to us to obtain the cooperation with us, yet they're dumping us now. The more Bryce thought about it, the angrier he got. His friends had been treating him and looking at him differently lately. Some of them even gave him the cold shoulder and mocked him sarcastically. He would never be able to stand this. Enough. People will always look up to those who are more powerful and despise those who are below them. That's just how the world is. What's there to be angry about? Dominic looked at Bryce and sighed. The most important thing now is to restore our reputation and make up for the losses that we have incurred. At the end of the day, it's all the Stardust Corporation's fault. If we can find a bigger backer than the Stardust Corporation. At this point, Bryce's eyes suddenly lit up. Grandpa, I have an idea. Do you remember the mega tycoon at the auction a few days ago? I heard that he spent tens of millions at the auction, and someone vaguely saw Ethan Sawyer, the richest man in Orange County, accompanying him. He must be a figure of status. If we can form ties with him, our difficulties will definitely be solved. Dominic Carter nodded and smiled approvingly. Yes, not bad. As long as we can get in touch with him, everything will be fine. Bryce, I'll leave this matter to you. Make sure you find a way to get close to this person. Yes, Grandpa. I'll get someone to find out more. We must get him to stand on our side. Once we do, the Stardust Corporation will be nothing. Bryce stopped panicking and raised his head with vigor and confidence, as if he had already seen himself having the support of the powerful figure and was above everyone else in the Stardust Corporation. Chapter 37. Banquet Invitation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Bryce was about to go out when an assistant hurriedly ran over to him out of nowhere with a luxurious-looking red invitation card that had words embossed in gold on it. Chairman, quickly look at this. After Dominic grabbed it and took a careful look at the contents of the invitation card, there was a look of joy on his face. He exclaimed, "Heaven is really blessing the Carters. Bryce, come and take a look. This invitation card alone is embossed with gold. Clearly, the person who sent this invitation must be very wealthy. Although the sender is not stated, he must be extraordinary. Grandpa, I think that this extremely costly high-class invitation was probably sent by the mysterious tycoon who spent tens of millions at the auction the other day. He also sent an invitation to the Carters. Clearly, he must have been paying attention to us and probably even has a good impression of us. Grandpa, we can be saved this time." Bryce was also overjoyed as he held the invitation card in hand and looked at it repeatedly, as if the opportunity for the Carters' comeback was on it. Yes. On that day, you must perform well and strive to make this mysterious tycoon favor our family. Once he does, we no longer have to fear the Stardust Corporation. The Carters soon made their people spread the news that their family had received the invitation card, causing some families who were still thinking about severing ties with the Carters to hesitate. There were also some small families, who had not been able to wait to announce terminating their cooperation with the Carters, that hurriedly visited them in a bid to repair their relationship. All of a sudden, Bryce and Dominic were much more confident. Soon, it was about time for the banquet. I knew that Wastrel wouldn't be up to anything good. He only stayed at home for a few days, and now that I asked him to go fetch some water, he's gone missing again. Karen rebuked incessantly with an apron around her waist. At this moment, a luxurious Bentley pulled over outside the Carter residence, and a chauffeur wearing a black suit and white gloves stepped out of the car. Who are you looking for?" Karen couldn't help but be stunned when she saw the chauffeur's demeanor. "Hello. I'm the chauffeur sent by Mr. Sawyer to pick Miss Carter up for the banquet at the Intercontinental Hotel." The chauffeur in the suit bowed respectfully. Karen was a little stunned for a moment. But she immediately smiled gleefully when she thought of something. "You mean Mr. Ethan Sawyer? You're here to pick us up for the banquet?" "Yes, madam.
Karen was so elated that she didn't know where to put her hands. She knew that over the past 2 days, many families in Orange County had received a mysterious and posh-looking invitation card. The event the invitation card was set for tonight at the Intercontinental Hotel in Orange County. Due to the fact that the invitation card itself was very posh and those who received an invitation were all members of the upper class of Orange County like the Carters, who showed the invitation off after receiving it, many families of slightly lower status than them hurriedly tried to suck up to the Carters again even though they were initially distant from them. The power of an invitation card alone was tremendous. Karen didn't expect to be invited too. Furthermore, they were invited by Ethan Sawyer, the richest man in Orange County. Could it be that? At the thought of that possibility, Karen was overwhelmed with euphoria. Immediately after telling the dignified chauffeur to wait a moment, Karen turned around and dashed into the house and into Charlotte's room. "Charlotte, good news. The Sawyers have sent someone to pick us up to go to the banquet." Charlotte was playing a video game on her computer. When she heard this, she asked in surprise, "Banquet? What banquet?" "Ah, this is the banquet that has been the talk of the town the past 2 days. This banquet must be held specially for you. It's the engagement banquet for you and Ethan Sawyer's son." Karen was so excited that she pulled Charlotte up from the computer desk and exclaimed, "Hurry up and get changed into some pretty clothes." "Ah, why do the Sawyers love surprises so much? They should at least inform us in advance so that I can get you a few pretty gowns." Charlotte was shoved toward the closet by Karen while still being dumbfounded. "Mom, did you make a mistake? Why is there suddenly an engagement banquet? The Sawyers didn't send anyone to discuss with us previously either." Karen pinched her daughter's face. "Silly girl, the Sawyers have already sent their chauffeur to our door, and he's waiting to send us there. Do you think I would be mistaken? The Sawyers are the richest in the county, and they're just different. They just like giving us sudden surprises." With joy and shyness on her face, Charlotte began changing her clothes under Karen's urging. Although she didn't know what Ethan Sawyer's son was like, she knew that she'd only benefit from the engagement because he belonged to the richest family in the county. Besides, the Sawyers had even sent such hefty betrothal gifts to them. This was proof of their sincerity. In another room, Cheyenne was watching some cartoons with Amelia. "Mommy, where did Daddy go today? Why isn't he here?" Amelia suddenly turned her head and asked. Cheyenne was stunned. She reached out to tap her daughter's upturned nose. "Haven't you been spending time with your daddy the past 2 days? Why do you want to see him again even though he's only been absent for a bit?" "Yes. I love it when Daddy is at home with you and me. I like it when we're all together. Just like in the cartoons. It'd be wonderful if I get to see him every day in the future too. Mommy, don't you think so?" Amelia's eyes glistened with joy as she looked at Cheyenne. Cheyenne was at a loss for words. Lucas had been staying at home to play with Amelia lately, and he would look at her with a gentle gaze in his eyes from time to time. However, Cheyenne didn't know how to face Lucas. Every time she saw him, Cheyenne would be reminded of when he reached out to pick her up from the puddle of water on that cold rainy day, as well as his warm embrace. While Cheyenne was in a trance, someone suddenly knocked hard on her door. "Cheyenne. The Sawyers sent someone to pick us up to attend the engagement banquet for Charlotte and Ethan Sawyer's son. Hurry up and get dressed. We're attending it together." Cheyenne was extremely surprised. The Sawyers hadn't sent anyone to their home ever since they sent hefty gifts the previous time. Why was there a sudden engagement? They didn't know what Ethan Sawyer's son's personality was like yet. Chapter 38. Showing off. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. No matter how surprised Cheyenne was, she hurriedly changed into a decent dress and helped Amelia do so too since the Sawyers' chauffeur had already arrived downstairs, and Karen had been urging her to hurry up.
Soon, Cheyenne's parents appeared next to the Bentley with their beautiful daughters and adorable granddaughter. The chauffeur in the black suit was stunned for a moment. He then hurriedly gestured for the Carters to sit in the back seat of the elongated Bentley. The Intercontinental Hotel was the most luxurious five-star hotel in Orange County. It was located by the lakeside of Bay Lake and was also right beside the most prosperous business district in Orange County. The hotel belonged to the Sawyers. At this moment, the main building of the Intercontinental Hotel was fully reserved for the event. And all the prestigious people in the entire county who were invited arrived in luxurious cars, dressed to the nines. It was the event for comparison between the upper-class echelons, where men would compare their cars, companies, and statuses with each other while women would compare their gowns, jewelry, and spouses. There were all sorts of judgmental gazes and scrutiny, as well as contemptuous remarks made everywhere at the venue. In front of the Intercontinental Hotel, Dominic was alighting from a BMW together with Bryce. Compared to the other luxurious cars around, their BMW seemed a little shabby. At this moment, a Bentley happened to pull over beside them. The doors opened, and Karen stepped out of the luxurious car with a smile on her face. "Why are you here?" Bryce saw Karen at a glance and rushed forward to question her sternly. "They've already been kicked out by the Carters, yet they still have the audacity to show up here at this gathering for the upper-class figures of the county." Karen no longer cared about Dominic Carter. Compared to the Sawyers, the Carters were nothing. Besides, the Carters had already declined greatly after losing the Brilliance Corporation. "Hey, isn't this Dominic Carter and his precious grandson? What's the matter? Were you invited to this banquet too?" "Forget it. Just take it that we're kind and gracious enough to let you in on account that we used to be family," Karen said, pretending to be magnanimous. However, she had a haughty and condescending look on her face. Infuriated by the look in Karen's eyes, Bryce hit the roof. "This woman used to be like a dog in front of Grandpa and me. How dare she speak to us like this now? Who do you think you are? Let us in. How arrogant. The host of the banquet should be kicking you out first. We are the spotlight of the banquet tonight. The Sawyers are going to announce Ethan Sawyer's son's engagement to Charlotte later. You people are just ignorant. Actually, I have to thank you for chasing us out. Otherwise, who can tolerate being pestered by some poor relatives? You must be dreaming, huh? Engagement. How could the Sawyers have taken a liking to your family?" Dominic didn't believe it at all. However, Bryce's heart dropped as he recalled the luxurious Lamborghini he saw at the entrance of Cheyenne's home previously. At that time, he was already convinced that they were engaged and was planning to confiscate the betrothal gifts sent by the Sawyers. However, he was interrupted when Lucas suddenly appeared. Next, there was chaos in the family, and Bryce forgot about it for a while. Are Ethan Sawyer's son and Charlotte Carter really getting engaged? Karen loved showing off, especially in front of Dominic, who used to be the head of her family but was now far from comparable to them. She felt that she had to show off in order to vent her anger. She pointed to the luxury Bentley she just alighted from. "See this. This car was sent by the Sawyers to pick us up and send us here. The Sawyers were generous enough to send us hefty betrothal gifts. They gave us $1 million in cash alone, as well as a sports car worth several million, a lakeside luxury villa, several Golden Wing International stores, and lots of shares. The Sawyers are so generous and sincere about Charlotte, and the gifts they sent are enough to last Charlotte for a lifetime. They're unlike someone over here who has never given us anything good in over 2 decades. Yet you still act like we've been given a huge advantage and bully us all the time. Who cares about you people?" Karen was obviously directing her remarks at Dominic. Dominic was so infuriated that his blood pressure went up, and his face flushed. He almost fainted. "Mom, cut it out." Cheyenne and Charlotte hurriedly stopped Karen after getting out of the car with Amelia in Cheyenne's arms.
However, they only glanced at Dominic faintly without paying much attention to the others. Since the Carters had already been so ruthless to them, they obviously wouldn't have any good feelings for them. The few of them walked straight toward the hotel, while William, who had been sitting in the car and was too scared to get out when he saw Dominic, also took advantage and got out quietly. He then scurried over to his wife and daughters. The usher led them to the main table at the front to take their seats. All the people in the hall looked at them in surprise while discussing softly their identities. All the prestigious families of the county were invited to the banquet this evening, and only those of significant status could sit at the front tables. However, they didn't know who the Carters were. "Hey, isn't that woman who's carrying a kid Cheyenne Carter? The Cheyenne Carter who had an affair with her chauffeur?" "Yes, it's her. That scandal was all over the news, and it was the talk of the town. I still remember her face." There were many people who slowly began to recognize Cheyenne. After all, the scandal spread throughout the county, and they basically had some impression of her. However, after recognizing Cheyenne, the people in the hall were even more surprised. "Why is Cheyenne Carter's family sitting at the main table?" At this moment, Dominic Carter's family arrived at the entrance of the hotel, but no one received them at all. It was as if the ushers didn't see them. They simply walked past them to receive the other guests cordially. Dominic coughed a little uneasily. Bryce pulled one of the ushers and asked, "Is there no one to receive us? Where will we be sitting?" Glancing at Bryce coldly, the usher snapped, "There are so many guests here, and I'm very busy. There's a number on the invitation card. Can't you see for yourself?" Chapter 39. The host of the banquet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, U. Bryce was furious because of the usher's rude reply. However, he dared not kick up a fuss because the Intercontinental Hotel belonged to the Sawyers, the richest family of the county. The Carters were lucky enough to receive the invitation. If they were chased out because of a squabble, it would be an enormous loss for them. The Carters held back their anger, went into the hall, and found their seats. However, the few of them were in a foul mood, especially because their table was near the door and obviously much smaller than the other ones. The Carters had no choice but to squeeze together. Unlike the other tables with beautiful, superior-grade tablecloths covering them, the table they were seated at had a simple disposable plastic tablecloth covering it. Their table was empty too. There wasn't a single glass of water, let alone decorative flowers, fruit platters, and fancy drinks. Many in the hall cast peculiar glances at them while exchanging pleasantries. Bryce was in an uncomfortable mood while Dominic couldn't help but blush in embarrassment, especially when he saw other smaller families that were inferior to the Carters sitting at tables better than theirs. "Bryce, remember, a little impatience will spoil great plans. No matter what, we have to get in touch with the host of the banquet before anything else. This concerns our comeback. Bear this in mind." Dominic admonished Bryce, as well as himself. "I must endure this. Once the host of the banquet is here, we will have hope, and we will get back at these people for humiliating us." Ever since Karen was led to the main table to sit down, she had been enjoying the scrutiny and envious gazes of others. However, she didn't know many of the guests present and thus couldn't go and chat with them. She had no choice but to remain seated and wait to see which table Dominic and Bryce would be arranged to. When she finally saw Dominic and the others being allocated to the shabby little table near the door, Karen almost laughed out loud. "This feels wonderful. The Sawyers are indeed worthy of being my in-laws. They must have found out that Dominic Carter and his family used to bully us, so they're standing up for us now. Impressive." Karen immediately wanted to go over and mock them, but she was dissuaded by Cheyenne. "Well, it's Charlotte's engagement banquet today, and she will soon become the wife of a wealthy man. We'll also become the in-laws of the richest family in the county. Why should I bother with that group of people? Soon, we will no longer belong to the same world." I'm not going to lower my status like that. Soon, the banquet officially began. After a speech to thank the guests politely, the MC quickly gestured to the side with his hand. Now, let's welcome the host of the banquet tonight, Mr. Flynn Davis, the general manager of the Stardust Corporation. Accompanied by enthusiastic applause from the audience, Davis walked up to the front of the hall in a poised manner, clad in an immaculate, bespoke suit. Karen immediately gaped in disbelief. What? Isn't this the engagement banquet for Charlotte and Ethan Sawyer's son? Why is Mr. Davis on the stage, Mom? Cut it out. Realizing the situation, Charlotte immediately understood that her unreliable mother must have made a blunder and mistook something. It was clearly a banquet held by the Stardust Corporation, but Karen mistook it for an engagement banquet. This was too embarrassing. Fortunately, Karen hadn't gone around showing off to others yet, or else she'd be extremely ashamed. The other group of people who were very stunned was naturally Dominic, Bryce, and the other Carters. They initially thought that the host of tonight's banquet was the mysterious tycoon who had spent a huge bomb at the auction. And they were thinking that once they got close to him, they would no longer have to fear the power of the Stardust Corporation and could take the chance to make a comeback. However, they never thought that it was the atrocious Flynn Davis, the one who had schemed against them and taken away the Brilliance Corporation, who had sent them the invitation. What does this mean? Did he deliberately invite us here so that he can humiliate us? The condescending usher just now and this shabby table must have been deliberately arranged for the sake of humiliating us, right? Having figured this out, the Carters were infuriated. Damn it! Bryce was the first to feel an urge to stand up and charge over because he couldn't contain his emotions. He, Bryce Carter, was the scion of the Carters and had been pampered ever since he was a child. Since when had he ever been humiliated like this? Hold it right there. Dominic Carter hollered to stop him. Grandpa, they're being a huge bully. So what if they bully us? Can we compare to the Stardust Corporation now? Since we are inferior to others, we have to bear with it even if we get bullied. Once we make a comeback and surpass them, those who once bullied us will naturally kneel down before us. Dominic's expression was grim, and his face was trembling slightly too. Yes, Grandpa, I know. Once we get the support of the mysterious tycoon, the Carters will definitely make a comeback. In the future, I must take revenge for the humiliation we've suffered today. Bryce exclaimed resentfully before sitting down on his chair. At this moment, Davis was greeting everyone in front of the hall smilingly. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend this banquet hosted by me. I am very honored. Not at all. You're being too polite, Mr. Davis. It's my honor to receive an invitation from you. Yes, it's a great honor to receive an invitation from you for this banquet, Mr. Davis. Everyone replied courteously. Davis smiled. In fact, there are two main purposes for today's banquet. I'm sure you've heard of the first matter, and that is the Brilliance Corporation will soon be in a long-term strategic partnership with us, the Stardust Corporation. I hope that we will receive your support. As soon as he said these words, many of the guests smiled. A few days ago, the Carters somehow offended the Stardust Corporation and ended up losing the entire Brilliance Corporation. Those who were well-informed knew about it. Although Davis claimed that it was a long-term strategic partnership with the Brilliance Corporation, the Brilliance Corporation had actually been acquired by the Stardust Corporation. However, the Stardust Corporation hadn't reorganized it yet, and thus, it would sound better to call it a partnership. All of a sudden, countless gazes were cast at the Carters. On the other hand, the Carters felt a strong urge to disappear from the banquet venue immediately after hearing Davis's words. Chapter 40. Wedding Anniversary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Davis's words and the various ambiguous gazes were like countless slaps on the faces of the Carters, making them blush and feel ashamed. A few days ago, the Brilliance Corporation still belonged to them. At this moment, Ethan Sawyer smiled and stood up. As long as the Brilliance Corporation is willing, the Sawyer Corporation would be glad to cooperate with the Brilliance Corporation. Ethan Sawyer, the richest man in the county, had taken the initiative to offer cooperation. The others stood up anxiously too. The Jones hoped to work with the Brilliance Corporation. The Lawsons too. Mr. Davis, please give us a chance. The Fords as well. If we can cooperate with the Brilliance Corporation, we're willing to offer 10% of profit. Sharing. All of a sudden, families of various statuses made their intentions to cooperate with the Brilliance Corporation known. For some large businesses, cooperating with the Brilliance Corporation could also make their relationship with the Stardust Corporation closer. On the other hand, reaching a cooperation with the Brilliance Corporation would be a great opportunity for smaller enterprises that were unworthy of the Stardust Corporation. Anyway, they could all tell clearly that the Brilliance Corporation was basically going to be a part of the Stardust Corporation. When the Carters saw this, their hearts were about to bleed in agony. Just a few days ago, the Brilliance Corporation still belonged to them. And now that there were so many opportunities for cooperation, the value of the company would definitely soar. Unfortunately, it no longer belonged to them. Davis raised his hand and pressed it down a little in the air, after which the guests in the hall soon quieted down and continued listening to him. Everyone, I appreciate your recognition of the Brilliance Corporation, and we can discuss our cooperation in detail later. But now, let's move on to the second agenda of the banquet today. Sure, please go ahead, Mr. Davis, everyone in the hall said one after another. For the second matter, I'd like all of you to witness a loving relationship together with me. Davis clapped his hands, and everyone watched in perplexity as the lights in the banquet hall gradually dimmed and the curtains behind Davis were drawn open. The bright spotlight cast on the small hall at the front of the hall, putting all the items on display. Wow! Oh my God, so beautiful! Many of them gasped in awe and surprise. In particular, all the wealthy women present almost had their eyes glued on the items that they couldn't shift their gazes away from. In the small hall behind the curtains, there were dozens of crystal display cabinets with staggered heights, and each of them contained a gorgeous piece of jewelry reflecting in the light and dazzling stunningly. It would still be normal if there were only one or two pieces of jewelry, but the dazzling rays of light from so many pieces placed together resulted in a stunning visual impact. In particular, there was a large pink diamond the size of a pigeon's egg resting against a black velvet background in the display case in the middle, reflecting a dreamy light that was bedazzling. Ah! That's the pink diamond sold at the sky-high price of more than $30.5 million at the auction that night. Oh my God! That pair of precious, superior grade emerald bangles at the side was one of the few finale items at the auction. And that pendant carved from a whole sapphire was also sold for millions during the auction. The crowd got into an uproar because the jewelry on display were all the precious treasures purchased at staggering prices by the mysterious tycoon at the auction that night. Could the mysterious tycoon that day be Mr. Davis of the Stardust Corporation? If that was the case, all of them would have to reevaluate Davis's status in the Stardust Corporation. It would be simply too terrifying. At this moment, Dominic and Bryce turned as pale as a sheet. They had always pinned their hopes of making a comeback on the mysterious tycoon who appeared at the auction house, but if Davis was that tycoon, what hopes would they have left? No, I think everyone has misunderstood. These pieces of precious jewelry do not belong to me, and I'm not that mysterious person who appeared at the auction either, Davis explained. The pieces of jewelry belong to a mysterious person who does not wish to be named. They are wedding anniversary gifts for his wife. Back then, this young man was incompetent and got married hastily but was unable to give anything to his wife. Later, in order to be worthy of his wife, this young man left without saying goodbye and tried to carve a career of his own. He left for several years. Now, he has returned. He specially purchased these pieces of rare jewelry at the auction for the sake of making it up to his wife, and he hopes that his wife will accept this token of his.
So, let us celebrate this couple's wedding anniversary and also sincerely wish this young man and his wife a lifetime of conjugal bliss. After Davis ended his speech, he led the audience through a round of applause. All of a sudden, the hall was full of thunderous applause. Although no one knew who the mysterious person and his wife really were, the fact that he could afford to spend tens of millions on precious jewelry and get Davis to help host a banquet for him had to mean that he was a powerful figure. Many wealthy ladies were staring intently at the beautiful jewelry, refusing to take their eyes off them. They even began to harbor immense envy and jealousy toward the wife of that person whose name they didn't even know. Sitting at the main table in the front row, Cheyenne also had a look of envy on her face, not because of the ostentatious jewelry but because of the love and affection that the young man was said to have for his wife. Suddenly reminded of something, Charlotte said, "Cheyenne, it's also your wedding anniversary with Lucas, right? Besides, those experiences that Mr. Davis mentioned just now seem quite similar to yours. Could all of this have been prepared for you by Lucas?" Actually, Charlotte began to become uncertain of her guess. Although she had seen Lucas's domineering side at the kindergarten previously, felt that he had been living an extraordinary life during the past few years, and even guessed that he might have killed many, the idea of Lucas spending tens of millions on jewelry was too far-fetched. At the side, Karen kept her eyes glued onto the dazzling jewelry, wishing she could dash forward to grab them and hold them in her arms. She was also filled with jealousy for the woman who had such a good husband. At this moment, she happened to overhear Charlotte's words and couldn't help but roll her eyes. "What nonsense are you saying? How can that piece of garbage Lucas afford these pieces of jewelry? He will never be able to in this lifetime and the next."